I'm gonna go live on everything.
Okay, now I'm trying to see if it went live on Instagram. It says I am live.
Yeah, I'm live on Instagram. I'm live
Okay.
on
Okay.
I'm live on TikTok.
I can tell in a second if I'm live on. I don't see it on
I feel
Insta.
like I'm at channel 10. I gotta look at 3 cameras.
I know. Give us a second, guys, if you're just coming in. We're new to this. Hey, guys. Hey, everybody. I'm trying to see, are we? It says I am. I just don't see where. Feel like I would have to get off the.
Peace, everybody tuning in.
Yes, hi, everybody. Okay, are we still good? Is anybody from my end on Instagram? I'm trying to see, are we? It says live there. Okay.
And when you get a chance, if you invite me on your on TikTok.
Okay, I'm going there now. Go live. And where are you? I'm trying to find the spot to invite you.
It looked like a little Gucci symbol. It should say on you like in your.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Oh, there we go. We're cooking with grease. Bam.
There we go. I feel like such a rookie. Lord have
Go.
mercy.
Now we legit.
Okay. All right. So I think we're up on all sites. Hopefully we're doing it right. I couldn't tell, quite honestly, guys, if I hit the Instagram and started that stream right too, but we're newbies. So we're doing the best we can. But we have a very exciting show for you. If this is your first time, I'm Lovelee Soul Empress, and this is Jamal Robinson of 720 Astrology, and we have very interesting subject matter for you guys. If you are returning, you already know you're about to get some knowledge. I'm gonna let Jamal give you guys a quick introduction, and we'll go from there.
Well, first of all, giving thanks to Lovelee Soul Empress for allowing me to participate with her on her platform, and to her audience for inviting me into your house. I also want to thank my folk, my little followers, my loyal soldiers for tuning in, and I'm just excited to have stimulating conversation, and let's see where it takes us.
Oh, I'm very pleased, and honestly, when I reached out to you, I didn't know how you were going to receive it, but Spirit said that's the person. So here we are doing it, and I think like we got such great feedback from the first show about what we were sharing, and it seemed like people were really interested in that. I want to say more mature look at astrology or another perspective. So I feel like today is going to be great. So we were talking it was basically an extension of what we were already talking about. But we were talking about relationships, karma, the 8th house, the 12th house, how sometimes you can see these aspects in the chart. And I actually brought that up to him because I was saying that, you know, you can look at, let's say, a partner's chart and see that there's like a lot of opposing energy, right? And I actually was having this conversation with my daughter yesterday too, because it's not a question of it being good or bad, but I feel like some opposing markers, or even let's say take the astrology out of it, when you feel the energy of like a lot of push and pull, this is a mirror of the things that you need to work out, right? The thing is that other person, they have their own mirror. Sometimes the two of yous are not looking in the same mirror at the same time. Okay, so you could be having two totally different experiences simultaneously. Okay, so you could be completely in love with each other, right? But there's an ebb and flow that happens in relationships beyond the chemical and physical reactions that happen, right? So while one person who may love their partner is off dealing with some childhood wounds that are being brought up in their mirror, this other person could be learning how to balance patience. Those are two separate problems. And they could conflict very much, right? Because this person could be in a needy space because they're trying to solve some childhood wounds, and this other person's trying to deal with patience, and the other person needing like wanting more closeness could be the thing that irritates. That why doesn't this person understand that I need them to be patient? I'm not ready for this. And doesn't mean that they don't love each other, but in their mirrors, they're working out two separate problems and could be completely unaware of what the other person sees in their individual mirror. I'll start with that.
That's very heavy. I mean, I'm trying to move this so it don't look like I'm not paying the TikTok audience any attention. And let's see, Instagram should be able to see me. So, okay, that's deep. And I feel like what you are describing, if we go back to the astrology, is to have a reflection in the mirror, that must be an image, right? And the image coincides with identity, and identity coincides with Aries, sense of who I am. And then the mirror is Libra. And what you're saying is that although two people may be in a relationship, and as a as a principle, relationship is reflection of the self, but there are two selves involved in the relationship. So the two different people may be getting different types of feedback from the relationship themselves, which then puts the emphasis on where is the North Node right now? In Aries, which is the sign of I am. And that's what is on the stage right now. Like any form of victimhood, any form of loss of power, all of it comes back to me. You know, but that's what I'm hearing when you say it's what triggered in my mind.
I think yes, because if we all are the all, right, and individually we're having our own experience, right, then that mirror is not always the same. And then add to that what part of it is nature, right? Or destiny, right? And what part of it is nurture or lack thereof, right? So your experience, right? So that's the other part of the equation, right? You may have this birth chart, right? You have this birth chart and it's reflecting parts of your personality and things that are going to come to fruition. Then you're meeting other people who are shaping you in essence. Your experiences are shaping you. So when you join with somebody, right? Last time we were talking about the Trinity, there's always a Trinity, right? So this would be like you, the other person, and then the joined experiences and how that's going to play off of each other. Right? So that is in play too. In other words, you could have an only child getting married to somebody in a huge family and how that shit goes. Because that person is used to having their things to themselves and having personal space, and all of a sudden they're put into a family where there's 8 siblings and nobody knocks on doors, and right. So like the culture shock, I think that's a large part of why relationships fail, because we don't necessarily understand that the other person is walking with their own fucking mirror. They have their own mirror. They may not even be seeing what you're seeing. Their story may not sound. And you ever listen to 2 people who just got divorced? That story never sounds, because they each had their own individual mirror.
Yeah. I've been through it. Yeah.
You understand? So, I mean, that's my perspective on that. But I would love to hear, because, when you said the Aries thing and the Libra thing, and yes, we are in that Aries season that's, telling us how do you want to show up? And what is it that you want to be receiving? And what do you want to, give out in the world or leave as your stamp per se, right? But then Libra's also there saying, what relationships foster that? What relationships don't foster that?
To add to that about reflection as it pertains to relationship, what's funny is when you're in the gym working out, different mirrors make you look differently. And you can look in one mirror and you're like, damn, I ain't making no progress. You go in the locker room like, oh shit, I see something, and I think it can be a metaphor for your state of mind, because as a man, like when I first came to Texas, my older brother, I'm like 6'2", he's 6'5". He was in shape, and that's how I got into bodybuilding and all that. And his approach, he was a Scorpio, and his approach to women was he was more aggressive. Like if we were out, he might grab a woman by an elbow and just pull her to him. And I saw that they would go along with that. But that wasn't my game. So when I tried to emulate him, that didn't work for me because that's not mine. So I was trying to take on his identity, thinking that what reflected back to him would reflect back to me. So it was like I see the image in the mirror, what he's seeing, but it ain't for me. I had to figure out and look out, who am I and how do I approach, how do I feel about myself? And I can't project and try to be something that is not me. So I know I'm going off on another, but it's about being aware of who you are, and the reflection is going to be based on how authentic. First of all, do you know who you are? And how authentic are you in that image? And it's going to determine what you see in the mirror.
Well, I think the example that you used was perfect, right? Because if we take young men just for a second, and
Mhm.
this would apply to young women, but it probably would be in a different type of example, right? But sometimes young men will emulate the worst of characteristics because they think those are the most masculine,
Mm.
right? They
Yeah.
think it's the most masculine, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they see, right? That's why we have, like, you know, a gun epidemic. You know what I'm saying? Because they think it's the most masculine. And there's a difference between masculinity and toxicity, and there's been a problem with that. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But that, I believe, is more nurture and not necessarily nature. I think that we have nurtured this into our situation, or if you want to say, haven't been nurturing enough to bring the right aspects out, or to make it a safe place for the masculine to be able to connect to his feminine side,
Mhm.
right? Because what do we tell boys? Stop crying, sit up, you're
Mhm.
gonna be all right, shake it off, da da da, right?
Mhm.
And when they get older, we're telling them, you don't understand. Why can't you express yourself? Right? So it's this, that's on the women too. Because who raises the boys?
Right. And the men are also responding to what they've seemed to be the effective way of attracting women.
I agree with that. But I would say that that's on the backs. And, it, you know, we could go, man, there's a lot of places that this conversation could go. But let's just talk about people in financial crisis or in hardship, okay?
Mhm.
And that's going to be most of our melanated population if we keep it a buck,
Right.
right? So you're talking about disimpoverished, you know, parts of society, right?
Mhm.
And the normalization of trying to get through a particular crisis, because it is, you know, like PTSD on a large scale, right?
Mhm.
So our males are mimicking the abuser's behavior, and the feminines are using what they feel is a commodity to be traded in for their safety. And that's, listen, that's keeping it a buck. And I feel like now, you know, women are trying to reclaim, not trying to sorry, I'm getting something over here. Not trying to, I got a notice of, it has to be over a certain age because of the content we were talking about.
Oh.
But basically, we're trying to reclaim how we interact, basically, with our male counterparts. We're asking for a new way to communicate, although maybe that has not been so well received.
Well, I think what I always try to do is look at the biggest picture, from take the camera and zoom out as far as you can. Cause online the culture is in directly or indirectly to pit men and women against each other. So if we take it out of that and completely remove any semblance of blame on either gender,
Right.
then we have to look at when we came up in school around eighth, ninth grade, and you got to watch that video where they had the woman's breast out and they showing you
Right.
how the woman gets her cycle and babies, and you sitting there like, oh man. And that after that, you on your own. But
Absolutely.
none of us have really had from an whether culturally or in some educational institution proper relationship training, like sex, learning about sex and relationship should go hand in hand because you're talking about the exchange of energy. So most of us are working from a deficit where we think we know what a relationship is, whether man or woman, and we don't really know because this goes back to the wound. The wound, a lot of times, is that people are coming out of environments where they never had any semblance of harmony between a man and a woman. Whether
Absolutely.
and so how are you going to come from a deficit and all of a sudden magically you know what and you're hoping on magic? You ain't really working on no foundation because we talk about the 12th house. It's wounds that develop when you didn't even have a consciousness yet. So mama was carrying you, mama stressed out because she don't know how she gonna pay rent, and you're feeding on her blood. Mama and daddy are arguing because they're frustrated because they're living in a world that they're trying to navigate, but they just so happen to have a baby that's gestating. And that baby is receiving all of that energy. And then this baby, male or female, comes into the world, becomes of age, starts having desires, start having sex. All of a sudden, maybe they're in a relationship. Now they got a baby. But this cycle, which I think is important, what we're doing here to have these conversations to try to get to the root of what is this thing we're even trying to participate in? What is relationship?
So it's funny that you bring up, the womb and the pregnancy. And one of the craziest things that I found out, I want to say sometime last year, was that when a woman is pregnant, and especially like if she's carrying a girl, okay, let's say she's pregnant, she's carrying a girl. At that moment, not only is she carrying all her own future eggs, but the eggs of the future girl. So when that pregnancy is being gestating, you're not just affecting the woman, you're affecting her child and the future children, the grandchildren.
That's right.
So there's the definition of the PTSD right there. That's the nature part. That, remember when I said nature versus nurture, right? So if you think about when we talk about these communities that are disimpoverished or that have gone through cycles, generations of abuse and neglect and oppression, right? And then you throw in trauma because like you have two people from two different households who have two different mirrors, who are having two different experiences, and the stress level when that comes together, and then the effects generationally of that. So for me, relationships are where you go. It's like you're actually looking for someone that you feel safe enough to unpack your bullshit. And that's a relationship. Someone that is safe enough that you can mirror your stuff and you feel like, okay, I feel safe, so I can put my armor down and try to understand myself. And they're doing the same thing. And those trauma things are bouncing off of each other. And how do you identify them versus trauma bonding and trauma healing? And we've both seen relationships on either spectrum of that. Okay, where you're actively healing with your partner, or you are trauma bonding,
If we just talk a little bit of astrology in this, I'm trying to find this. It's a very simple way to. Well, I'll use this one. You can't see it completely, but let's see.
I see
These
it.
are the 8 phases of the moon.
Okay.
Now, this is also a template for everything we exist within,
Okay.
because Aries is the new moon energy. It's the
Got it.
seed, and that is the germination. Now, 180 degrees away from that would be the Libra axis.
Correct.
Now, what's crazy though is the word associated from an agricultural standpoint. If this is the germination, this is the withering.
Okay.
And so, what I'm trying to point out here is the fear of men and women in relationship is the fear of death. And not just literal death, but the fear that I don't exist as far as I don't matter. Or if I got to fight, think about, 12th house is right before the first. Whatever trauma I bring in, it helps to shape who I think I am and what I project out into the world.
Correct.
And so if the seed is not healthy, then all my relationships become an undeclared state of war because I'm trying to fight being killed. That my
Yes.
essence.
Yes.
When in reality, what I tell my clients is that relationship means death. And they be looking at me like, that's crazy. Like, but they don't, I'm talking to alchemical, because this podcast, we are acting out a death scene because I can't dominate. Lovely's not. We have to die into each other's energy to create something that's what the alchemical meaning of that withering is. But I think, when have we ever just had relationship really broken down to where we realize it's humbling to the ego to really be in a relationship?
Yes. I also would add to that what you said about the withering and the dying, and that I would say that there might be two sides to that mirror. And what I mean by that is that, I can't speak from the masculine perspective. What you're saying makes sense, especially when they say phrases like the ball and the chain, and men are very much in tune with the energy that there's something, like they're acknowledging that something dies. Okay, they're very much acknowledging that. Whereas the woman is raised in a different way. Okay, she's raised that her purpose is to serve, right? So what she's fighting is the death of not being seen. Once I surrender, whatever that looks like in that relationship, right? Once I surrender, will that person still see me individually? Because the woman is fully aware that she is doing this shit by choice. Understand, the woman is a miraculous thing. Okay, so she knows that she does not have to surrender. She is choosing surrender. So that's what makes it even more crazy, that she's like, does he see? Is he aware of the sacrifice that I am giving? She doesn't see it as a death. She sees it as a sacrifice.
Well, on the flip side, for a man, think about, if the germination of seed is associated with Aries, then for a man to be in relationship, he's sacrificing his ability to spread his seed.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
both, what I want to keep to, because we're in a situation now where there needs to be some cohesion between masculine and feminine.
Absolutely.
I'm on my Bunny and Clyde shit. Like, all I need in this life of sin is me and my girlfriend.
Right.
Down the ride to the very end. Just, so
girlfriend, right.
in Texas, we say somebody that's gonna cut for you.
Mm-hmm.
So my son got an old soul, and he's like, told my mother, he's like, I want Grover Washington Wine Light for my birthday. So she sent him the CD, and that's the one that's got him and Bill Withers on there. Just the two of us. We
Right,
can
right,
make
right,
it.
right.
So what I'm trying to make sure that what we always come back to is, if y'all two are down with each other, like, relationship, if we go back to the ancient world, is about survival. Like, romanticism is that's a more modern thing.
Yes.
But the union of these opposite energies is survival of bloodline.
That too.
And so we in a world like this, energy we in is giving you every reason to say fuck the other side. I'm gonna
That
do
too.
it on my own. I'm a passport bro, and or men ain't shit. Listen, and so what
4B,
happens
yeah.
is, I need my opposite to help me fight this beast.
I agree with you. And it's like when I said that the woman sees it as a sacrifice. See,
Mm-hmm.
we don't want, I'm going to speak for the ladies for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily want the man to make the same sacrifice as us. In other words, if we say, I sacrifice, we don't need them to say, I sacrifice too, because we know that. We already know that, right? We see that they go out and they bust their ass. We see that they're not allowed to show their emotion. We see that they're supposed to be the strong arm, right? Or the silent, like the wall that we can lean on. We see that, right? We want to be heard without the comparison. So if he sees it like, you realize that I'm dying in the sense that I am committing myself to only spread seed with you, right? We acknowledge that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that the woman, there's something in our innate nature that does not compute death. Maybe it's because we have the womb. So everything is about the other side, like the yin and the yang, right? You're seeing the death. We're seeing like, but we're going to bring life.
Right.
Is this the right person to bring life? So it's not that the question is different. It's just reversed. It's that mirror.
And can we go to a Bible reference?
Do it.
So the first time the words woman and man are mentioned in the Bible, like, I like to delve into Hebrew.
Yes.
And so woman, first of all, the overall theme for man and woman is fire. And there's a book, I can't remember her name, but I got it's called Love is a Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so the word for fire in Hebrew is Esh. Okay. So woman is Esha. And so that means the hey letter is added to the end. When a hey is added, it means behold. So the woman who is attracting, how is she attracting the man? Because she says, behold, I am fire.
I am fire.
Now, but the man is another version of fire. He is Ayish. He has a yud in the middle, and yud means to know and sexual intercourse. And it's funny because the Bible say, and he knew her. And so what I'm trying to say is, we're supposed to be bringing and feeling two different things, because that's what makes us.
Yes.
Because you're bringing a different version of fire.
Yes.
And the man is bringing.
It's just that we keep expecting to see the same thing in the mirror. That is my point. We keep expecting to see the same thing in the mirror. If we could just understand that our mirrors are never going to look alike, we would be so fucking, listen, that would just do so much for us. Okay, our mirrors are not going to be the same. It does not mean that we are not inhabiting the same space together. It doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge each other's um views. Okay, that's what you do. It's an expression of love, or at least for women, they perceive it like that. It's an expression of love for your partner to take the time out to look in your mirror. Like, look what my mirror. Look at the shit that's going on in my mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
We take that as an expression of love, right? Oftentimes, in my experience, right, I feel like a lot of men feel like if they don't share it, they're doing that as an act of love. Like, I don't want to put my burdens on you and tell you about the shitty ass day and all this bullshit and the stresses that I have. But because as a woman, it is our language to want to share that, we would feel as if that was reciprocal. But often, masculine energy feels like they need to protect you from seeing what's in their mirror, or from showing any kind of emotion, or from showing any vulnerability, which is the thing that the feminine craves. Remember when you were saying, when you thought that it was one way that you needed to approach feminines, and then you realized that that didn't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's that the thing that we're trying to get to understand is what they're trying to protect us from, if that makes sense.
I want to go back to what you said earlier, though, where you held the mothers as for partial accountability. Because
Yes.
what has to be realized is that any woe that is experienced with men, whenever you want to look at and diagnose a tree, you need to look at the roots.
Absolutely.
And a lot
Absolutely.
of feminine energy is indirectly in conflict with other feminine energy, because if what was the nature of the situation when this man is gestating? Does he come out pre-programmed that he's got to act a certain way? How was he nurtured? And we're not negating none of this on. I ain't trying to push. No, this is not negating
Right.
the father's
Right.
role, but we also got to, from a spiritual metaphysical standpoint, one of the hardest things to accept is that there are no victims in the universe, even melanated people. Like, this is what's crazy. The deeper we study and you start finding out who the first slaves were, oh boy. And you start learning about experimentations and in different places and how certain people came. And it's like, the greatest thing with this journey is I'm seeking my power. And so the man has to go back and he has to make amends with his roots, not to villainize his mother, but he's got to recognize where and this comes back to the healing thing. Like, the stuff we're discussing is kind of like the effects.
Right.
But what happens when you don't really realize that that how you're acting is the result of a wound?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would add to that, because you said that there are no victims. And I have said in my groups many times, you have played all the parts. You've been the oppressed and the oppressor. You've been the masculine and the feminine. You've been the mother and the father. You've been the victim and the assailant. You've been this is the point of this dimension. And when we come here, I'll take it a step further. Some people not going to like what I'm about to say. We come here to learn certain experiences. Okay. And you sign that contract before you come through. You request these things. Okay. So let's say that in the past life, you were a cheater, right? And you saw in that lifespan, you hurt many people, right? And so at the end of your lifespan, you could have decided, you know what, this time, that time I was really selfish. This time I want to experience what that would be like to be on the other side. Guess what? That's going to be part of your experience. Because, whether you want to look at that as karma or not, and karma doesn't always have to be bad. But if we're, supposed to be having a complete experience, then that means that you're going to see all 12 houses, right, of the zodiac. You're going to see all the ins and outs of all those houses. You probably have, there's some people that believe that when you come to this world as a Pisces, it's because you've lived the other signs already. Okay, so when you think of it in that way, you're not a victim, right? And I was just saying earlier today that every experience that we have is an opportunity to learn where the trigger lies. Oftentimes, we're very external people. We're looking for things outside of ourselves instead of inside of ourselves. This is why, a lot of people will feel like they're like, oh, I can't find anybody good. Is it that you can't find anybody good, or is it that you haven't learned a lesson? So the universe keeps giving you the same shitty order because that's what you're attracting, and that's what you're in resonance with, and that's what you don't want to accept, is that you haven't done the work on yourself, and that's what's in your mirror. So that's what's being ordered, and that's what's going to get delivered to you, like DoorDash, So
I think we're getting a heavy dose of medicine right now with the energy that is permeating our reality. We got Chiron in Aries. We got the North Node in Aries. We got the ruler of Aries in space that it does not feel like it has power. It's in Pisces. What else is in Aries? We got the eclipse occurring in Aries. We just had an earthquake today, which I believe, if you take as above, so below, as within, so without, I think the energy that is being put out as a collective is earthquake energy. It's just it's very eruptive, and I think we're getting a heavy dose of bitter medicine of self-analysis, self-realization, and I'm gonna genderize this for a second for men. When we talk about Aries is often, we talk about it's the war god, but a lot of the aggression of Aries sometimes is really based on fear. And going back to what you said about men not wanting to share, and that shell, because every seed has a hard outer shell, right? Like the crab. And the fear is that if I open up and all that I got is exposed, if it's mishandled, then this may not ever grow into fruit. This shit might just get flushed down. And that is why, because especially as melanated men.
yes.
And I talked to a friend of mine a while back. When we step out the door, you got so many things we have to look at each other and determine whether, are you a threat to me? Then we have the majority culture, who historically we will have some type of trauma signature about some type of abuse coming from that group. Then we have a system. Then we have just the frustrations of life. Then you have dealing with where I came from. How was I raised? So, And so you come out and we all walking around mean mugging each other. And then we get with a woman and try to love her, and it's like the seed has not been cultivated for that.
And I'll take it a step further, because when you were saying the thing about mothers, right, and them having culpability, which I agree, and I don't know if you're gonna remember this case, because I said this back then, but it was Freddie Gray. It was like maybe 2015 or something. It was a young man who got picked up by the cops in Baltimore, and they put him in the back of a van, and they were driving around with him, and and they were purposely stopping so that he would break his neck, and he passed away. He was murdered, actually, right? So later that day, there was riots, right? And there was a young man, he was like 15, and he was on top of a car, and he was tearing that car up. It was a police car. And it was like, I don't know, half an hour later, and you saw his mama tearing his ass up on national TV. So just the same image that you saw of him on top of the car, you had the same image of his mother whooping his ass, right? And I said this then. I said, you have to understand that what you're seeing right now is her trauma.
Right.
Right? Because the reason why the mother raises the son in the manner, especially when we're talking about melanated, people, right? In a certain manner, to be mean mugging, to keep things to himself, is because she wants him to be safe. She wants him to live, right? So as a mother, her thing is, like you said, we're here to procreate, right? So she's trying to keep the line alive, okay? It's terrible because we haven't been in a state where we feel safe enough to say to our sons, express yourself. It's safe to do so, right? Right? But as women, that's not the partner we're looking for. Right? So that's the problem, right? For women, right? That's the problem that we're carrying, because we're trying to keep our sons safe to live, right? But we're looking for the man who's in touch with his feelings. That's kind of like, do you understand?
Well,
does that make sense, what I'm saying?
It does. I'm going to give you from my perspective as a man. I feel that I see some of my classmates, they be on talking about this. You can tell people are trip on social media. You can tell when somebody arguing with their woman or their man, because they post this, they trying to be subliminal, but everybody know what the deal is. And I remember in school, that Mars that we talking about, that was the preferred man.
Absolutely.
You didn't want nobody writing, poems in high school, like Patrice O'Neal say, I draw an eye and then a chair and say, ish, I cherish you. Just tear that shit up. Get out of here. Oh, I'm about to say something. Get out of here, chump. That's a better sounding. But so what we got, because women come from the state of Libra, like you were describing earlier, to me, you were describing Libra. We're not worried about death because we already know we about to grow something, okay? And then when men come from the state of Aries, but what happens though is when the man gets around 40 something, he starts becoming more like where the woman began. He starts fearing more of being alone, and he wants companionship, but he done tore his ass, and now maybe nobody want him, and he's sitting around all sad and shit. Like, and then the woman,
she's
starts
reversed,
becoming more like Mars,
because she did all the sacrificing and the nursing and the babies and all that. So she's like, you know what? I still got wind in my tank. I'm ready to set sail on some shit. I'm done with your ass. So it's the flip. Yeah. It's the flip.
And so, since it's like she wants,
But so does he. Okay. And I'll give you the
Right.
example because he says that he wants the good girl, but that's not necessarily who he spends his time chasing as the young man. You see, so that's a listen, we're talking about the mirrors. Let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it a buck. All right. So it's not just the woman because he does it too. He says, I want the woman who's going to be sincere and humble and this and that. But he picks the chick with the big ass and the loud mouth and the thing, right?
Right.
Okay. So, and I have a question, my theory on that is that they oftentimes a man says what he wants the easier docile thing, and I'm gonna get into Lilith and Eve for a second.
Mm-hmm.
He wants the Eve that's docile and will look at him with submission, but he really don't learn nothing there.
I don't know. I don't know, but I don't know.
I think that he
I've
needs
never.
the Lilith. He needs the Lilith because Lilith challenges him because she's his equal. She's
Okay.
not submitting.
Okay. All right, folks. This is what y'all tuned in for. This is where the
That's
shit
right.
gets
Let's
real.
get it. Let's get it.
Okay. Okay. I think you got to factor in the person's chart into that. Because I'm going to be,
Of course.
for me, I have never respected a docile woman. Because I'm a shit talker. So if I can't, my daddy put me up on this. She's like, I don't want no woman that I can just tell whatever, because my mama was a teacher, but she cusses like a mother. I mean, like her mouth is so foul, and I don't mean that as disrespectful. Just my mama is a supreme cusser. So, right. So she's not no docile woman, So I've never been attracted to the loud. I want to fight in the street. I like a woman who has her own mind. I've always, and I like fire. I'm attracted to fire.
Well, that's what I was about to say. That so for those of people who follow me, they know that I say that power is never spoken; it's always felt.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's many ways to be loud. Some of the most powerful women never say anything. It's their energy when they walk in the room. A man knows she's not fitting to submit. And when I say that men want the docile, it's because that's the overall consensus that's what they're looking for. But most guys will tell you, I want my peace, and right. But in reality, their moms were strong women, and in the end they end up going for the strong woman because that's where he can grow. That's where iron sharpens iron. That's where he becomes his higher self. I mean, that's part of the Emperor and the Empress, but
Can we go back to Lilith? Because this is what we talked about on the phone.
Yeah, go ahead.
I see those stories. There's layers. There is a gender layer based on historical things that have happened and the fact that a patriarchal order has been in control for the last 2,000 years, roughly.
Right.
But at the root, that story to me is not necessarily men as a gender and women as a gender. It is the first patriarchal travesty was the patriarchal mind that dominated the matriarchal mind. And I think Lilith represents in men and women because everybody got Lilith in their chart.
Absolutely.
Lilith represents the feminine, chaotic aspect of everyone's psyche.
Yes.
That's why, we were talking. I said, it is hard for me to work for somebody. I have Lilith in my sixth house conjunct Jupiter. So Jupiter expands the rebellious spirit within me. Like, I don't want you telling me what the fuck to do. Like, you know, fuck, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it myself.
Right.
Fuck that, but I think it becomes more felt by women because of historically the fact is that we live in a patriarchal dominated world, and the secret is that this patriarchy secretly wants to be women.
Yes, and I would like to add to that because before I do though, we're getting on 55 minutes in the live. If you are watching from Instagram, we may get cut off at the hour point, and you may want to find us on YouTube or TikTok. Okay, we're live on either site because that may go down at the hour mark. But I agree with you that Lilith and Adam and Eve, they're all representations of the masculine and the feminine within us. Every embryo starts off as female, okay?
Correct.
80% of the body is water, which is female, okay? It's dictated by the emotions of the subconscious. All of that is feminine frequency. But as above, so below. And so we can't have that outside of us. And also, like, if you have it inside of you, it also exists outside of you.
Right.
Right. So you could look at take Adam out of the picture for a moment. There's the Eve and Lilith, right? This is like the two sides, right? Now, when you said that we all have Lilith, what it made me think of is Lilith represents the free will. Okay, so that is in all of us. That's why it represents all of us. Okay, she, or that feminine frequency, the chaos frequency that says I will not submit, or I don't have to submit, going back to what I was saying about relationships, right? The acknowledgement that submitting is voluntary, right? That we don't have to do that, right? So this is part of our nature per se. Like, it really can't be stripped away from us. Okay. And I feel like that's, once we recognize that the masculine and the feminine are better for challenging each other, for questioning each other, for making each other accountable and explaining what the fuck they see in their mirror, that's when we get to the meat of the relationship. But as long as we're busy telling each other, nah, that's not it. That's not it at all. We're not going to get on the same page. We're not. And like you said, there's been a patriarchy going on for 2,000 years, right? So a lot of what we see is the sickness or the illness of this patriarchy being, but both men and female and women are being pushed to come into balance, not only with each other, but within.
Big facts.
Right? So there's no escaping that. We are going to see, just like, listen, I know that a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but everything swings. Right? So if we've had all this time over here, what you think is going to happen for us to get to the middle? We have to come all the way over here to come back to the middle. And that's the reality.
I think we have to say in a public space, because context is tantamount.
Yeah.
That because I argued with a professor in college about this. So I dropped out of school when I was first time I was supposed to go as an athlete. So I ended up having to go back as an old man and finish. So now I got a little bit of wisdom. So I'm picking up this professor who she's always, I'm a feminist. And And I had to challenge her, like, as a melanated man, don't group me in with that bullshit you talking about because that's a different type of feminism, I feel, than what you are expressing right here.
Right.
I feel like you're talking about more of a divine energy. Am I
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Versus something that was cooked up. Because what the energy that I felt was that from her was that who she's married to another professor at the same place. And I'm thinking, hold on, you grouping me in this whole group that has oppressed you? Like, how the fuck can I, wearing this skin suit, oppress you? And so, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, and they can't. They can't. Okay. But I will say that what they can do, they can't lump you in, but what they can do is that other group can hijack energy, which they've been doing for 2000 years, right? So here's the problem, right? Because as melanated folk, right, we have to be able to say to each other and be believed. That's the big key, right? Hey, yo, they're trying to play you right now. They're just trying to steal your energy right now. Don't believe the hype, okay? But that doesn't happen because we go by teams.
It's real. Yep.
Okay. And when did that ever work? Because at the end of the day, that's still, a line, right? And women see it like that too, because just like how you could feel like that, right? There's women of all shades who feel oppressed because they are being oppressed. I mean, globally. Like, you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, the paycheck says it even, right? So there is real oppression there. The problem is that we don't know. It's a thin line between love and hate. We don't know who the hell we could trust. And like you said, the same thing. You said we step out, we don't even know amongst our own brothers who we could trust. The feminine has that same problem. If we took time to understand that we're facing a lot of the same problems, but without the rhetoric. Without the rhetoric, right?
And hidden
because
agendas.
To me, because guess what? I'm a feminist and I stood home all my life, took care of my kids because my mother was the working woman. So I wanted to be home when mine came. Okay. So my thing was, how do I afford that? How do I do that without giving up my independence? So we're shaping it every time. Every generation is shaping that, and every woman is shaping that for themselves. And we don't have to be doing the same thing to have a similar agenda. We're not a monolithic group, just like minorities aren't. You know what I'm saying?
How do we... Oh, if we can go here.
Okay.
This is just something that I thought was just an interesting fact. That 2024, of course, adds up to the number 8. And the word for love in Hebrew is eb. And it's spelled Aleph, Hey, Bet. And it adds up to 8.
Okay.
And so this is something a note I wrote. Most relationships are based on fear, more so than love. Instead of saying most, I'm going to say too many, because I'm not going to say most. I'm not going to cast that spell. Too many. And verify to continue.
Yeah, TikTok will do that every once in a while. That means it's going to be coming up on minds too.
Okay. And so I want to see what you think about this. So I said most relationships are based on, too many relationships are based on fear. more so than love, and some relationship problems. Oh, we already talked about that. That many other problems within the relationship are based on the fear of being dissolved, and we already touched on that. You said that's more of a masculine
Well,
concern.
women fear um disappearing in the relationship, no longer being seen.
So two different types of being dissolved is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, I'm with that.
All right, because we know, like, we're constantly creating, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so much of what we birth, others take credit for. Right?
True.
So you have to understand, like, we feel, and I would say, not for all women, but there's a lot of women out here who don't even so much mind the sacrifice of that if their immediates knew. In other words, if the children could recognize it, if the spouse could recognize it,
Mm-hmm.
they're not so much externally seeking.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's the difference. So we're worried about maybe being left later. Like, I gave the children, I formulated the house, I helped you build your career. How many times have we heard that story, right? Like, the
Mm-hmm.
woman will have the children, he goes to college, he becomes, I don't know, an accountant, an attorney, whatever, right? And she stayed home, Susie homemaker, right? That might sound traditional, but in reality, there may have only been enough money to send one of y'all to college. Right? You got
Mm-hmm.
maybe 3 kids coming up behind. Right? So now them 3 kids need the college. She might say, you know what? I can get a pretty good job without the college. I can maybe forego that. So think about how all the times that that she forgoes. Right?
So let me ask you this. If we get down to the brass tacks, if you said the pendulum has been so far over on the patriarchal side, and don't you expect for it to balance, it has to swing back. So what message is there for men, especially us as melanated men? Are
Oh,
we
I
to
have the
accept?
perfect example.
Okay.
I know where you're going already. If you look at the oppression that our melanated brothers and sisters have been under for so long, and in so many opportunities, we have had opportunities to be spiteful and vengeful, and yet did not avail ourselves of that. If anything, we've been more forgiving. Maybe sometimes when the shit wasn't even warranted, right? So the fear of that, if it swings over here, that the power is going to be abused because it was abused over here, that's in y'all mirror. That's not in our mirror.
Okay, when you say y'all, you're referring
Men,
to
I
all
say,
men.
I'm referring to our melanated brothers who may fear that if it gets swung over here, that we're going to abuse the power, but they have to see the same way they see it. When you look at it in a color thing, all this oppression that has been done to us, and even when we had opportunities, we didn't take it to oppress, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. The woman doesn't want to oppress the man.
Okay.
She's fighting to be seen. That's what she's fighting for. She's fighting to be seen. She doesn't want to rule over him. Just as we don't want to rule over our white counterparts. We don't want that. I don't even want that fucking responsibility. You see what I'm saying? But that fear is the same fear, that what will happen if they get power? Will they use the power against us? That is the same damn argument. And that's what we're trying to express. That's not our goal.
But from melanated men, let me tell you this like this. I'm gonna be straight up. So I'm new to TikTok, but I'm not new to teaching. I've been out for a while on YouTube since
Okay.
2015.
Okay.
I've seen teachers come and go. And let me tell you the game plan. This is what you do. It's the same play that the preacher does. If you preach or teach to the itching ear, your chances of winning are better. And the itching ear is the woman, because all my businesses, have mainly been off of women. In fitness, take care of my female clients first because they the most loyal. They pay. So I understand. So the preacher's preaching to the women first. The so-called conscious teachers, they pander to the women. And
Right.
so here's one thing that you got to do when you get out there on the circuit. You got to say the black woman is God. And we learned that we learn stuff like the woman don't even need a man to have a baby. She can go out there and just let the sun shine on her womb, and she can, and the women eat it up. The dude make money, then all of a sudden it come out that he was on the flim flam. So what happens to, there's a certain group who wonder quietly, because you can't say it out loud, is it feels sometimes like we're being grouped in with a system that we've been suffering in.
And that's the thing. So that's my point, right? If we can realize that our argument is the same, our argument is the same. Okay, so basically you're saying we're being victimized by that system. And we're saying we are too. Only thing is they lied to y'all to tell y'all to abuse us too, because it helped them to keep us in line. So when the oppressor said to the masculine of all shades, you let her talk to you like that, he was putting in his way of keeping his woman in line. Do you understand? And so when that was adopted, the problem is we're trying to say, yes, we get how they treat y'all so dirty, how they do y'all in this way, and they don't give you the respect, right? But when you come home, we feel like you give us the hell that you can't give them. And meanwhile, we in the trenches with you. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, you understand?
But is that a collective reality, or is that something that is happening? Okay, let me give an example.
Mm-hmm.
We just found family in Philadelphia and New Jersey that we didn't know.
Okay.
And the elder of the family, he's 95, just turned 95, and he's kind of in that window where he may be transitioning.
Okay.
Now, he had bad luck with women.
Mm-hmm.
So his daughters are traumatized because their mother was in and out of the house, out of their life. She liked to party.
Right.
And so she left them. She abandoned them. And the daddy was there. He gets remarried. And this woman pretty much does the same. So, and we know metaphysically, something in him, he's attracting this.
Yeah, he's doing the same. He's playing the same game, right?
But my point of bringing this up is that I try to be careful about broad stroking, because I think it creates, if we're trying to heal, if the message is underlying, you men have been fucking us over. Y'all been coming home.
But see, that's not what I mean. That's not what I'm
Okay.
saying.
I
What
want
I'm
to make
saying,
sure. Okay.
what I'm saying is that we're both have scars from our condition.
Okay.
And the way we display them is different. And
Okay.
part of what has happened to our melanated brothers is that they've been used as a weapon to beat down the melanated sisters without them recognizing that that was the game plan, that they were not trying to give respect, our, you know what I'm saying? They were trying to use a divisionary tool between the masculine and the feminine melanated community. And once we see that, the healing could begin. Now, as far as like groupings, right? We have to look at what may be a more common situation. When I speak of these things, it may sound like broad strokes, right? But if you look at, most women will tell you that not every relationship they had with a man was bad, but you can't meet a woman who hasn't had a bad relationship with a man. Meaning it's so widespread of whoever had the toxicity, both will have it, because we already established that you attract what you need to experience to heal something, right? Whether you, with the free will, choose to take the assignment and do the work is a whole other thing. But this is why you keep experiencing things and they come to you, right? So if we're going through that as a collective, we have to recognize that there are parts that we still are not recognizing about the struggle, okay? And I could give you another example. Let's take it out of male and female. Let's go with melanated. Let's go with melanated US soil, melanated Caribbean. These two groups were both traumatized by chattel slavery, but they'll argue about who and what. It's the same thing. It's the same example I'm giving you with the male and female, how that expresses itself, how we try to articulate it, or what we feel we argue may be the more prevalent thing to the man versus the woman is secondary.
Okay, that's
You got it.
That's why I'm okay. I appreciate you saying that, because I have to bring these things. I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm telling you what men say who don't hate women,
Right.
who have never abused women. Now, ain't no angel, like, but I'm talking about who respect. But
Right.
but
There's a
they,
difference between the toxic male, yeah.
yes, but they also have these conversations like, yo, man, I don't feel comfortable with the energy of, you got to bow down, and it's this what you've been. So I'm glad you said that, because it needs to be said, because sometimes it feels like there are forces like saying, just look at the internet. It's this. They got a thing called a manosphere. My thing is I'm trying my best to figure out how do you meld and heal, because to me, I think that whole manosphere thing, I have nothing against people's sexual preference, but I think it's like, well, I'm not even going to say the word. I think it's a movement that ultimately separates men from women. I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay.
Right.
And to counter that, you see in the space I've been in for these years, it is what these teachers have to propagate. And then they don't really live by what they say. They got 15 women, 25 children, but they steady telling the woman, you're God, And so you feel like in the middle, there ain't no way to have this conversation about, you understand? You feel where I'm coming from?
I do. I would also say, and I want to give you another example, because I feel like if the melanated brother and sister only understood how similar their arguments were, there would be a lot less fighting, right? So I'm going to give you an example. You could have a man who'll say to his woman, because let's say she's yelling, right? And he'll say something like, "You can't speak to me like that. I'm a man." That phrase in itself is saying that he deserves a different level of respect than she does. Because it's not normal for a woman to respond. If he's yelling, it's not normal for a woman to say, "You know what? You can't talk to me like that. I'm a woman." He's going to be like, "What? Like, do you understand?" So there's a lot of the language that a man says that he doesn't realize that he's already challenging us in his speech because of a system that has made him comfortable in
I
that.
think that there are situations where that's true, but that is, I want to reiterate, that is not across the. Let me tell you,
No. I'm not
I
saying
was.
that, but
Let
I'm
me
just
let me
I'm
just
just giving an
counter.
example of how that happens, you know?
Okay, let me counter that
Yes,
with my
please
own
do.
experience, where this Leo, I tell you, I'm always attracted to fire, and so I was with a Leo back home,
Mhm.
and she was a former basketball player, so she almost my height. This
Right.
crazy motherfucker. Excuse me, I'm sorry. She I'm she slapped the shit out of me one night cause she caught wind that I might have been messing around on her or whatever. Slapped the shit out of me.
Right.
So my natural reaction, of course, if I'm hit, but I don't hit her. You
Right.
know, so what I'm saying is there are on both sides, there are situations where somebody has been disrespectful
Yes,
and
and
challenged.
listen,
Mhm.
I wouldn't even include physical violence in that because I feel like that's different. And I also feel like women often will strike a man because they think that she won't hit him back. So that's a whole other argument. You understand? But what I'm saying in the reference of just the when a man says, "Because I'm a man and you can't speak to a man that way," it's already putting they're not realizing that in the speech they're making a delineation between what is acceptable for the man and the woman. I feel like physical violence should not be for anyone. I would
But
like to say that.
well, thank you. Because but what I'm saying is if we go big picture, whether it's man or woman, can we agree that how we behave and act in relationship sometimes or many times leads back to whatever baggage or wounds we carrying? Without
Absolutely.
placing any blame on the gender, just straight
What
down the.
Yes, I agree with you. What I'm saying is I think what we're losing the translation is not that we both carry the scars. We both are working out our traumas in real time in our relationships. But what
Mhm.
I'm saying is that the way that the male works it out and the way that the female works it out looks different. And so we're very much caught up on how the other one is expressing it, not realizing that it's the same fucking trauma. We're just doing it in a different way.
Okay, let's role play.
Got it.
Lovely's mad.
Okay. Lovely's mad.
Snapping on Jamal. How would you snap? Would it
How
be
would
an
I snap?
MF? Would it be a
Now, at this stage, no. But maybe at 21, Lisette, 21-year-old Lisette,
uh-huh.
that was a different version. You
So
understand?
okay.
So there's also that. Let's take maiden, mother, and crone. If we're talking about the woman, you're going to get three different responses in three different time periods in her life.
Okay, what about you now? But
What about me now?
you
I'm going
still
to
your
try,
button being pushed.
if I'm going to try to express it first in the calm way,
Uh-huh.
I will probably at some point would shut down and try to regroup because that's what I would do. I would
So
try to regroup and then come back and try to reiterate in some other way. I would take time to say, how can I rephrase this to be heard? Not necessarily to because you may not still agree with me, right? But the way that I shape it so that you can understand my perspective, that's more important than per se winning the argument. Now, if at a juncture there comes the point where that person is saying, no, I'm not willing to hear you, then you have to make a decision whether you feel that that's an argument you want to win. But then that's
okay.
me.
Okay.
You
Thank you.
follow?
So check this.
Okay.
What you just told me is that because you are an evolved soul, what that first example didn't even come up in nothing you just said. There was nothing in your presentation that said you're going to be yelling at me to where I feel like I got to respond, even if I'm wrong and I'm thinking I'm not standing on my square. But for me to respond, you can't talk to me like that because I'm a man. You just described that your evolved self, you're not even going to create the situation for that response because
But remember, we each have a different mirror. So what I said isn't maybe necessarily what you heard, and vice versa, because I'm listening through the filter of my wounds, and so are you.
I
So
agree.
you understand? So when I say it now, I listen, I have a bellowing voice. I'm a NYC girl, right?
Uh-huh.
So I may not necessarily curse or whatever, but I speak with conviction. In my hands, I'm Puerto Rican, so it's like, you know what I'm saying? So there's gonna be that aspect, right? Now I don't know what his experiences are, right? Maybe just the pitch of my voice may sound aggressive. Do you get what I'm saying? So so even if her intent or what she's doing is not displaying that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to hear that.
I agree.
And
I
reverse,
agree.
because he could be saying like, babe, I think that you should do this, that, and the third. And she might be like, I don't know who the hell you're talking to right now, right? Because she heard some other shit, right? So this is also part of it. And that's the thing, that we have to stop seeing it. And I feel like some problems are more women problems, okay, and some problems are more man problems. And until we can say that, we're gonna go in circles.
Right.
Okay. So like you said before, women have problem with other women, right? That is stemming from outside relationships. So if we could get women to stop doing that and see each other more as a sisterhood, that would heal a lot for women, right? Conversely, if men didn't necessarily take a woman's desire to feel empowered as a disempowering act towards him, that would take us a lot of places too. So it is somewhat about the male and female experience, not so much that we're different, because we're going through the same thing, but the way that we're showing it to each other is in our masculine and feminine meat suits, per
Okay.
se.
Can we bring this around to a spiritual
Yes, please do.
meeting, commingling, to
Yes, please
where
do.
we both come to agreement that if two souls are working on themselves and examining themselves and searching out their wounds, that they're going like, we're not talking about no Mary Poppins shit. Like, we never
Right.
argue. When people say that, that's the ones that's going to end up on first 48. We
Yes.
never argue. That's some bullshit. But we're not talking about that. But can we agree that if we are both, and if the other factors, if we're supposed to be together, and if we're working on ourselves, can we agree that we'll figure out a way to work through the imbalance, whether historical or at the moment.
Absolutely. I think that is the overall goal. I really believe that that is what most women have been screaming for quite some time. I'm sure the men want the same thing. I think that we have trouble hearing each other because we're so busy trying to say, but no, but look at my mirror. Look what I see. This shit's fucked up over here. Look at that shit. So we're not really listening to each other. Okay, because we're still at the point where we're trying to be heard. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the big problem that we're having, that we're still trying to be heard. I also feel like, as you know, and this is why I asked you about the chart thing, because when you take it to a spiritual aspect, and you come through, like I said before, you come through, you signed up for all this shit. You signed up for all the experiences that you're having, right? Because you needed those to complete something, because you're supposed to have all, you know, God is love, you're love, right? You're God. So you're going to try to have all the experiences that you can possibly have from every perspective, right? We've been all things. So how do we understand, like when looking at the chart, people think they have 3 categories, right? Basically soulmate, twin flame, and karmic. That's how they view the relationships, right? Right. Now, what I was trying to get to with you about was, are there particular, like I heard the degree, I think the 22nd degree is like kill or be killed degree or whatever, something to that effect, right? So like, are there degrees or certain things that we should look for in the chart that should be like a warning? Because all relationships are going to have some kind of conflict, right? All relationships, they're there for us to grow. They're there for us to challenge ourselves, okay? But are there some markings in the chart where we should say, you know what, girl, I think maybe you shouldn't, you know, necessarily try that one out. I was curious about that.
Well, I must say the degree theory aspect is not my expertise.
Okay.
So I'd be fronting if I haven't studied it to that degree, but I like we know when we always talk offline, my entry into astrology was from the realm of metaphysics and learning about magic and other things. And so those terms, I don't even really know how to use them correctly, like twin flame. And I don't even use, and not for me to negate them having significance. I'm just not up on, because I'm looking at from what's in your chart, and are you aware of it, and are you actively working to bring it into balance? Like, let's say, here's what I would say is a warning sign. If this person got a whole bunch of air and very little water, like if there's a complete elemental miss, and let's say maybe even the water houses may be missing, or just pick any element. If that person is not aware of that and seeking experience that helps them to integrate that into their lives, then if they go out there, they might need to meet somebody who has that element, who will balance it. And then, but that person still has to be aware of their imbalance. Like this person might have a whole bunch of water and no fire,
Right.
or what I'm saying. And so I think it's about the nature of the energy that meets each other. And
Yes.
so You know what I'm saying? Do that make sense?
I do, and and that's why I was talking to you about me and my partner's chart, because we had so many opposites, and I feel like in a way it forces us, good, bad, or indifferent, right? To meet in the middle. You understand? Because we, on any given day, I'm gonna show up as Aries, he shows up as Libra, or I show up as Taurus, he shows up as Scorpio. Like, you see what I'm saying? So we have that tugging and pull on some days it's negative, on some days it's positive, right? So
Right.
depending on how we show up in that interaction.
That's a great
But I
point.
also was thinking about the eclipse happening now, and the north node and the south node being, in Aries and Libra, and then the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like almost every planet, there might be one or two exceptions, is between Aquarius and
That's
Taurus
right.
right now.
We got a wedge. It's a wedge. And
Okay.
so it's a very condensed, concentrated energy where people's will is very strong. Because a wedge is we're gonna bust wood with it, and
Right.
I ain't budging. It's a is it's forcing us to look at the nature of the baby. Like, here, just these words for Aries, just some words. The infant, the unrefined seed, the initiation of life, kindergarten. That word kindergarten, fire. This kindergarten where the kindle fire, where the fire get lit. And we're in between the eclipse that happened in Libra and this eclipse in Aries. So if we go back to this chart, we're in between something dying and something being born. So it's hard with all this concentrated energy as a collective for us to be allowing something to go. And it don't
Yeah.
necessarily mean a relationship, but for example, just me being here is shadow work for me. That's
Right.
why I'm like, it's divine that you even reached out, because my chart says I got to learn how to share my toys, and I got to learn how to be a part of community.
Right.
I've lived too much as going to war.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck everybody. I'm and
Like
I'll go
throwing
at it by
bows.
myself.
Yeah.
Ludicrous. Drop bowls on them.
Yes.
And it's like, you reached out to me, and I'm like, damn, her channel bigger than mine on all platforms. And can I be honest?
Yes, please.
I don't like feeling like I'm receiving more than I give. And I'm like, dang, I need to be more of an asset, because I
But your
don't.
knowledge is the asset. Okay, or else I wouldn't have reached out, right? But something you said, and I think I don't know if it was in our last session where we were just like shooting ideas, or if it was in
Mhm,
the actual last live that we did. But
mhm,
you said something about this energy was also completing the last set of the North Node, right? And
right,
after we had the conversation, that shit lit up like a light bulb,
right.
right?
19.
No, when you were saying that it was last in Taurus and in Scorpio, and
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah,
now
yeah,
we're
yeah,
like
yeah.
completing that, right? And
Mhm.
and I don't think I ever told you how I described the last North Node access between Taurus and Scorpio. And
Mm-mm.
I think that it has very much to do with where we are right now. So the previous 18 months, it being in Taurus, it was saying, what do you value? What do you value now? What do you value now in this leg of your journey, right? And what are you willing to let die for it?
Mm.
Because Scorpio is the death card. What are you willing to let fucking die so you can have what you value now? Right? So we learned that lesson, and then we went into Aries with Libra. So now that I know what I value, I'm birthing that shit. And whatever relationships we're still able to make it, they either better be supporting me or they gotta get the fuck out of the way. And that's where we're at right now.
For real. For real. For real. You know, for real. It's the, you know, why does the earth contract during the winter? Because it's freezing out shit. It's freezing out. It's letting things die off. And everything that has regenerative power will reemerge in spring.
Right.
These bushes outside my house, they die every winter, and they come back faithfully, bright red in the, you know, and it's because they're supposed to be here. And whatever don't sprout again, you know, I need to pull that up and I'm gonna have to replace it with some new seed. So I feel you on that, you know, and like we talked about too on the phone, like what we're dealing with is still Mars and Venus.
All
Mars,
of
like,
this.
so I think even us challenging each other in these conversations like this, it's like it's divine timing.
Right.
Because Mars and Venus are forever interlocked. No matter how much they are interwoven and they're locked at the hip.
Yes.
And they archetypically are trying to figure each other out.
Yes. I believe that, yes. And themselves, because really they're trying to figure themselves out through each other. Right? Because you learn the most important parts of yourself through the interaction that you have with your partner. Let's keep it a buck. You learn the most there.
Yes.
Right? So because you have the persona that you think that you are, and then your relationship says, I don't think so.
Right.
Let me show you some other shit about you that you didn't know.
And nobody can cut you as well as your mate.
Right.
Nobody can get to you because, you know, like the seventh house is the house of relationship, but also open enemies. And so your mate knows your weak spots like nobody else, you know. And I'm gonna make it gender, especially men, you know, because no matter how much tough exterior we put up, whoever we decide that we're gonna stop fucking around and be with, that woman is gonna see a level of vulnerability in that man that the rest of the world never sees. Never sees. You know, my woman seen me cry. You know, my old man passed, you know, when my babies were born, you know, and you're not gonna see me out in public walking around boo-hooing, but it's just the stuff, but yeah, that's
I get that. And that's the vulnerability. So a lot of people think that, it's the romantic love. But I've been in 3 long-term relationships. I speak as a widow who did the forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I've lived different existences in relationships. And I will say that, like you said, we glamorize and romanticize relationships, but you didn't really get there until that frequency of like the hotness kind of, cools down, and you're there because of the commitment to each other. That's when you get to the meat. It's not when it's all hot. Okay, that's the lightweight shit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Me personally, I there's a lot of people who say that marriage is a bad thing. I don't think that. I've done the till death do us part type shit. like to the full
Mm-hmm.
extent of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So we don't know the unfolding of love until we've gotten kind of through those depths of the soul for each other. And that reminds me of the story of like Libra, right? And is it like Persephone was the daughter and she went down to hell?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. You want to give it to them because you probably know the story better.
It is Demeter where we get the word diameter, where when we split
Okay.
the circle in half. So Demeter is the goddess of grain and food. And so her daughter is Persephone, the beautiful maiden, and Pluto is the brother of Jupiter and Neptune. And both the two of them are wild boys. They got women in all realms. But Pluto is lonely. And so Pluto comes out of the underworld and he sees Persephone in the field and he must have her. And that's why when we see Pluto in the chart, we sometimes read it as compulsivity because and Pluto deals with victimization because he overwhelms and he also deals with that sex abuse. That's Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
So he overtakes her, takes her to the underworld, and Demeter has to, for the first time, deal with loss. And so Demeter has a lot to do with Taurus
That's what I was
because
gonna say.
yeah, she's
Because of
got a
the
lot of.
seed and the grain, it
That's right.
sounds like the Venus version of Taurus, and then in the Libra, she's the expression of Persephone, the daughter. But I'll let you
Mm-hmm.
continue.
Mm-hmm. You own it, you know. And so she has to deal with Scorpio. And Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. And he introduces pain. And they then come to an agreement where Persephone will stay 6 months in the underworld, 6 months in the above. But they introduce in that story how love and pain are intertwined.
And I also say, from my understanding, Demeter, being the mother, said, "Okay, you don't return my daughter, I fucking kill everything out
I'm
this
gonna withhold food from the earth and I'm gonna
from everybody. You
famine.
don't give me my daughter back." As the Empress, Taurus and Libra, right? That's who they
Mm-hmm.
represent in the tarot. I'll kill all this shit. I'll kill it all. There will be
Mm-hmm.
nothing to grow out of the sweet water of the earth, right? Out of the ground of the earth. And so what happens is they have to, she says, Persephone says to Pluto or to Hades, right? I will stay voluntarily, but you have to let me go 6 months of the year to see my mother, or else humanity basically dies, right? So
Mm-hmm.
again, she's displaying the Lilith energy. I will submit by choice, but I need this. I need to be seen. I need to be allowed to express myself. I need to be able to go, whatever the case, whatever the rule is there. But yes, that is the story.
It makes me think too. I'm sorry about
Go ahead.
what you said about you and your mate, about how that Scorpio countering the Taurus energy, that
Because he has a stellium in Scorpio, and I have a stellium in Aries. So I'm a Taurus, but he has a Scorpio and stellium, and he's a Libra, and I have a stellium in Aries.
and Aries.
So
Yeah,
you see, so we have the opposite energy, but we're
right,
both signs of Venus.
right.
So it's really weird. Like,
You know, the thing about it is, I think the pain aspect is one of the most important components of that story.
right.
Scorpio introduces us to pain, but what Demeter learns is what she's, because Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, but Mars and Scorpio is not Mars and Aries. He's willing to fight to the death for something. He's willing to fight for what he loves in Scorpio. And so not only does she show that Lilith energy, but she's like it turns on that other side of the psyche in her of she by pain, she learns what she's willing to die and fight for
Back to
or
the
kill
Taurus
for
North, yeah, the Taurus North nodes and South node in
in
Scorpio.
Scorpio. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think you alluded to that earlier because you said you like, what am I willing to die? What do I
Yeah, because
value?
Taurus says, what do I value now? Like, what am I willing or
Right,
want to create now? And what am I willing to let die for that shit?
right,
So in Demeter's case, she was willing to let humanity die for her daughter.
right.
Okay.
You know what's crazy? All this, like, can I just as a tidbit for anybody trying to learn astrology? Can I give you
Yes, please.
think agriculture? Because all like this thing right here, when like, and I'm not gonna what they say on the new word is don't gatekeep. So I ain't
Right.
I'm gonna give you the book. It's called The Witch's Circle.
The witch's circle. Okay.
This is where I got this from.
And let me say that my students have went and purchased everything you showed them. Just so
Oh
you
man,
know.
that's dope. That's dope.
So please do continue that because on my channel, we are a teaching channel.
Oh
So,
man. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, that's where I got this thing from. And if you use this as your basis, it'll open up the understanding of these of the whole 12 houses, because they take the eightfold cycle of transformation, they break it up into germination, sprouting, growing, maturity, withering, death, dormancy, and warming.
okay.
And it's like, oh shit. So the sprouting aspect, that's Taurus, because it's what's coming up out of the ground.
Right.
But Demeter had to experience the death aspect, Scorpio, for her to activate her complete power and to become whole. So it's like, damn, it's all this, like you said about the people we relate to, they're reflecting some experience that we needed. So Pluto even had a role, even as diabolical what he did was he created this rich area in the underworld where the seeds actually go to grow.
Yes, it's very there's a depth that even the negative experiences are part of where we need to go. And if you think about your darkest moments,
Oh boy.
okay, right after that comes your breakthroughs. Tell me no.
Big facts.
Okay.
So no lies.
Some years, let me tell you something. When I was a teenager, I thought 1986 was the worst fucking year that ever happened to me. But if I didn't,
86.
yeah, but if I didn't have the experiences of 86, okay, 1993 would have fucked me up.
Mm.
Okay. And then when like 2006 would have came, I would have been crippled without the other two. So this is the thing, right? That when you're walking through it, you think this is the worst ever, but the worst of times become the best of times because you learn who you are and what you're made of.
That's a bar. That's a bar. I need to make that like something
We
on
talk about
TikTok.
it. We talk about it all the time. How about the worst of times is really your best of times because they show you what you're made of. Without them, you would not know. Listen, I have walked through the fire. Okay, talk about being baptized by fire. And I know that you become your best self on the other side of the challenges.
Mm-hmm. And this is why when I'm delineating charts, I tell people, you want me to tell you all the beautiful shit about you. I get it. We all like to have, but you need to find the hard aspects in your chart and the ugly things that you may not want to acknowledge. And I'm just saying this to piggyback on what you're saying, because that's where the gold is refined at. You know, those squares, those semi-squares, all those oppositions, and all these things you're describing are moments in life where you probably had some type of square or some opposition,
Hell yeah.
or or your progress chart was in disarray, and it was like, damn, and it's forming you into something that you don't even know you are becoming.
Let me tell you, when I believe Saturn was in Aquarius, like in 2020 or just
Oh
stepped into
boy, I don't even
2020.
want to even.
Let me tell
Yeah,
you something. That shit crossed over my Mars and my North Node, and my life blew up. But you know what was born from that 4 months later? This channel.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't no Saturn return or nothing. Saturn said, oh, you've been fucking around and you didn't do all the stuff you were supposed to do for your North Node. And I'm coming through here and I'm gonna stomp on all your shit. Matter of fact, I'm gonna burn everything down. And if you don't step into your North Node, I'm gonna burn all this shit down. And that's exactly what happened. And they, spirit knew, because I had taken a long hiatus. I speak of it openly on my channel. My husband had passed, and I stepped away from the occultism, which, how do you do that when you hear spirit all day long? Right? But I stepped away because I was like, oh, too much, right? I stepped away, and they said, she won't come back. She's using it for herself, but she won't come back for the masses. And her North Node is in Aquarius. So how do we do that? Well, we're just going to fuck her all up when Saturn walks through there. And that's going to force her, because we know that where will she turn? To us. And what happened? The first thing I went, smudge my house. I was like, I don't know what got to go, but I can't take this. So just tell me what you want to do. And 4 months later, here I am. I was live. Something I would have never done. Believe me. You know what I'm saying? So there is that thing of like the universe, whether you want to see it as spirit, I believe that it's both, right? Timing and spirit that meet, that force you into things that you've been avoiding. Like you said, things that you don't want to see about yourself, things that now I always tell my clients, you have a choice. You can do it in the easy way, where you say to spirit, I'm ready now to learn my lessons in the soft way, in the easy way, with love and grace, or you can get your ass kicked. The choice is yours. You're still going to have to learn those lessons, because that's what you signed up for when you came here.
Yo. And on that note, we're going to send around a collection plate.
Yeah. Right. Donations are accepted. Right.
I went to the chiropractor today, and I'm going to say that I'm going to end my piece on this. And, he tell you, take a deep breath. And then when you exhale, he going to come down on my thoracic part of my spine. And I'm anticipating. And he's like, what you holding on to? And I was like, damn. Because I was anticipating him putting his force on me, and I wasn't releasing. And as we approach this eclipse, that reminded me, and I'm going to say this to remind others, to tell my son earlier, just let it go. Just let it go.
Absolutely.
Stop trying to hold on to whatever you might be trying to hold on to. Let that shit go. In your mind. And so that this portal, this womb that's opening up, so that you can come through and be birthed into whatever the fuck it's supposed to be. Whatever you've been building for the last 19 years, something's supposed to be getting brought through this portal. And and I'm gonna shut up.
No, listen, I agree totally with what you're saying. I feel like, and I was having that similar conversation with my daughter, and we were talking about anesthesia and how I hate going under. And I recognize why, because I like to be in control, right? It gives me a level of feeling safe, right? So the
Mhm.
idea of being put to sleep and not having control or being able to remember is terrifying, right? So we're always looking for control. But I'm here to say that that's an illusion. Control is an illusion because there's very many things that are outside of your control, right? I feel like what we should be trying to do is control staying present.
Mm.
Okay, because when you're looking back, you're in a place that no longer exists. And when you're looking forward, you're bringing anxiety into a situation that is not yet created. And this is the problem that tears us apart from our partners, from our family, right? Because we're projecting things in our mirrors, you know, and in reality, you know, if we could, like you said, using the example of the breath, if we could just take a pause and listen to the sound of our breath, like they tell you to do in Reiki, and remember that this is just but a moment in time, and stay here and not back there or in the future, because it's not real. Only now exists. But yeah, I digress.
Well, I think this has been a dynamic discussion.
Yes. Yes, we need to have another one, but I feel like we took on a lot this one time, and I think that's
Yeah.
pretty good. Um yeah, I think we should leave it there. I definitely going to be rewatching this so I can absorb more of this. If you guys are liking this kind of content, don't just like, you know, do the likes, go back and comment on the videos afterwards. Help us with the algorithms, send it to your friends. You know what I'm saying? Because we're going to try to bring this to you guys, you know, hopefully if the calendar you know, helps. We're going to try to do it kind of like bi-weekly. So if you guys are interested in this, show your support and let us know that these are topics you guys want to discuss. Any words you got to say?
Yeah. And share it. You know,
Absolutely.
share it. And but as Lovely said, now is the only thing that exists. So we thank you for being here right now.
Ashe.
You know, thank you for your energy, for your comments, your likes, and and please give us feedback, like Lovely said. Like if there are topics that you seeing, things showing up in your life that maybe we can provide some input, we're open. Um, and I say thank you, Lovely, again for
And thank you.
sharing with me. And I will end my piece on that.
Yes, and thank you for joining us, and thank you guys all. Please do follow. Please you know, tell your friends. Like I said, bi-weekly, real conversations about Mars and Venus, about astrology, and about things that men and women are going through. We're going to touch on a lot of subjects here. So this is definitely the place to be. We're going to try to do it every couple of weeks, all right? So that's what we got for you guys tonight. Wishing you all light and love and blessings on blessings, guys. Bye.
Peace.